Picture an era where the scent of atomized high-octane racing fuel and melting bias-ply rubber dominated every weekend. The 1960s drag strip wars were completely brutal. Detroit's Big Three were locked in an unhinged, no-holds-barred arms race where the only metric of respect was raw, brutal acceleration. It was a decade defined by corporate espionage, secret factory performance packages, and a blatant disregard for basic safety in the pursuit of absolute speed. Every manufacturer wanted the ultimate bragging rights, a quarter mile at a time. This countdown features the undisputed kings of that golden era. We are going back to look at the machines that seemingly defied physics. But be warned, one car on this list shocked absolutely everyone and permanently changed performance history. And the machine sitting at the #1 spot posted a time that nobody expected. What does it take to conquer the most vicious horsepower war the world has ever seen? Let's count them down. Number 10, 1967 Shelby GT500. By the late 60s, the Ford Mustang was gaining weight, shifting from a nimble sports coupe to a heavier Grand Tourer. To ensure it remained a terror on the street and the strip, Carroll Shelby performed a heart transplant. Under the hood sat the formidable 428 cubic inch Police Interceptor V8. Breathing through dual 600 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetors, this engine was conservatively rated at 355 horsepower. In reality, it was generating nearly 400 horsepower and an earth-moving 420 pound-feet of torque. When taken to the drag strip, the GT500 clocked a highly respectable quarter-mile time of 13.9 seconds. It was fast, undeniably muscular, and helped cement the Mustang's legacy in the muscle car wars. However, it was also heavy, carrying extra fiberglass bodywork and luxury interior appointments. As the decade progressed, manufacturers realized that going faster meant stripping cars down, not dressing them up. And while Shelby ruled the early days, a rival brand had a massive aerodynamic trick up its sleeve. Number 9, 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. When Dodge realized its standard Charger featured the aerodynamic profile of a brick, they went to the wind tunnel. The result was the legendary Daytona, featuring an enormous nose cone and a towering rear wing. Built primarily to dominate the high banks of NASCAR, Dodge was required to homologate the car for the public. Buyers who checked the right boxes received the legendary 426 cubic inch HEMI V8 engine. Chrysler rated the Elephant engine at 425 horsepower, a figure notoriously suppressed to keep the insurance agencies from completely blacklisting the car. Despite a massive curb weight pushing 2 tons, the HEMI's brute force propelled the Daytona through the quarter mile in a blisteringly fast 13.7 seconds. The Daytona was a top-speed king, engineered to sustain 200 miles per hour on a superspeedway. But on the drag strip, sheer weight held it back from a faster elapsed time. For pure, immediate acceleration, the factories knew they needed lighter, meaner brawlers. Number 8, 1969 Dodge Super B A12. Dodge understood that hardcore street races did not care about aerodynamics or top speed. They cared about the first 1,230 feet. Enter the A12 package for the Super B. At its core was the devastating 440 cubic inch V8, but with a massive upgrade, the 6-pack. 3 2-barrel Holley carburetors sat atop an Edelbrock aluminum intake manifold. Dodge claimed 390 horsepower, but the sheer volume of fuel and air it moved suggested significantly more. The A12 was instantly recognizable by its flat black lift-off fiberglass hood secured entirely by 4 hood pins. No hinges, no springs, just raw purpose. With heavy-duty internals and an aggressive Dana 60 rear axle, the A12 blasted down the quarter mile in 13.5 seconds. It was a torque monster that completely overwhelmed its rear tires off the line.
We are just getting started. The times only drop from here, and the top 3 on this list are so fast they barely seem real for the decade. Number 7. 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4. General Motors practically invented the muscle car segment, and by 1969, Pontiac wanted to remind everyone who was boss. Under the direction of John DeLorean, Pontiac unleashed the Judge, an aggressive styling package masking severe mechanical hardware. The crown jewel of the Judge was the Ram Air 4 400 cubic inch V8. Featuring revolutionary round port cylinder heads, high-flow exhaust manifolds, and a hyper-aggressive camshaft that barely held an idle in city traffic, this engine was a mechanical masterpiece. Pontiac rated it at 370 horsepower. Capable of high RPM screaming, the Ram Air 4 pushed the Judge to a verified 13.3-second quarter-mile time. It was a brilliantly marketed machine, combining vivid carousel red paint with lethal drag strip capability. The insurance companies were rapidly cracking down on performance, but Pontiac ignored them and kept building monsters. And if you think these cars are quick, wait until you see what cracked the top 3. Number 6. 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. Ford was tired of getting beaten by the Chrysler HEMI in NASCAR, so they engineered their own massive engine featuring semi-hemispherical combustion chambers. The result was the 429 cubic inch shotgun V8. Because NASCAR required the engine to be placed in a production vehicle, Ford shoehorned it into the Mustang. The engine was so immensely wide that Ford had to contract CarCraft, a specialty engineering firm, to physically alter the shock towers just to make it fit. From the factory, Ford rated the Boss 429 at a laughable 375 horsepower to appease the rapidly panicking insurance industry. Uncorked, the motor easily produced over 500 horsepower. In factory tune with standard tires, the Boss 429 laid down a vicious 13.2-second quarter-mile. It was heavily restricted by the factory exhaust and emissions controls, but anyone who knew how to tune a carburetor could turn it into an absolute menace. Ford had built a legendary engine, but Chevrolet was engineering a secret weapon out of aluminum. Number 5. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. General Motors had a strict corporate edict banning engines larger than 400 cubic inches in midsize and compact cars. But a few rogue dealers knew about the Central Office Production Order System, or CPO, meant for fleet vehicles like taxis. Fred Gibbs Chevrolet used this loophole to order Camaros with something terrifying under the hood. The ZL1 package featured an all-aluminum 427 cubic inch V8 engine, originally developed strictly for Can-Am racing. Weighing roughly the same as a standard cast-iron small block, but displacing massive volume, it drastically improved the car's power-to-weight ratio. Chevrolet rated the ZL1 at 430 horsepower, but dyno testing proved it generated well past 500 horsepower. Because of the extreme cost of the engine, the ZL1 package doubled the base price of the Camaro. On factory street tires, it ran a 13.1-second quarter-mile. Bolt on some racing slicks and open the headers, and the ZL1 shattered the 11-second barrier. It was the ultimate street sleeper, but to go even faster, the factories had to start building dedicated race cars. Number 4. 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11. Stepping back slightly in the decade reveals a massive leap in absolute speed. In the early 60s, drag racing was dominated by full-size cars, and Chevrolet wanted to rule the superstock class. They quietly released the regular production option Z11. Powering this massive vehicle was a highly modified 427 cubic inch W Series V8 engine fed by dual Carter AFB carburetors. It produced a staggering 430 horsepower and 575 pound-feet of torque. But power was only half the equation. Chevrolet engineers initiated a radical diet. They swapped the steel hood, fenders, and front bumpers for lightweight aluminum. They removed the heater, the radio, and the sound-deadening material. The result was a full-size luxury coupe transformed into a stripped-down, gutted brawler. The Z11 famously annihilated the quarter-mile in 11.2 seconds. It was a factory-built special designed entirely to win on Sunday and sell on Monday. But even this stripped-down Chevy couldn't hold off the sheer madness waiting in our top three. Most people think they know what the fastest car of the 60s was, but they're usually wrong. Number 3. 1964 Ford Thunderbolt. Ford recognized that putting massive engines in heavy full-size cars was a losing battle. They needed to drop their biggest engine into their lightest available platform. The mid-size Fairline was selected, and the Thunderbolt was born. Underneath the signature teardrop hood blister sat Ford's lethal 427 cubic inch high-riser V8. Ford stated it made 425 horsepower, a rating that the drag racing community universally recognized as a blatant lie. It made well over 500. To shed weight, Ford replaced the front body panels with fiberglass and swapped the side and rear glass for thin plexiglass. They even removed the inner passenger headlights to serve as direct ram air intakes for the engine. The Thunderbolt was terrifying to drive, overpowered and severely undertired. Yet, on the drag strip, it posted an official quarter-mile time of 11.6 seconds, with professional NHRA drivers tuning them down into the low 11-second range. Ford thought they had built the ultimate weapon, but Chrysler was about to drop a nuclear bomb on the drag strip. Number 2. 1968 Plymouth Barracuda HEMI. Chrysler was determined to absolutely dominate the NHRA Superstock class. To achieve this, they created the BO29 package for the Plymouth Barracuda. These were not built on the standard assembly line. Partially assembled shells were shipped to Hurst Performance for radical surgery. Hurst shoehorned the monumental 426 cubic inch race HEMI V8 into the compact Barracuda engine bay. Chrysler's official rating remained the standard 425 horsepower, but this specific race-tuned variant pushed nearly 600 horsepower. Hurst went to extreme lengths to cut weight. The steel doors were acid-dipped until the metal was paper-thin. The side windows were secured by seatbelt straps because heavy window roll-up mechanisms were removed entirely. The rear seats were deleted, and sound deadener was completely absent. On the track, this dedicated factory race car demolished the quarter-mile in 10.5 seconds. It was a 10-second car delivered directly from a dealership network. The BO29 Barracuda was a masterpiece of horsepower and reduced mass, striking fear into every competitor. Nothing else on this list could touch what this car did. Number 1. 1968 Dodge Dart HEMI. This was the LO23 package, the ultimate mismatch of absurd power and negligible weight. Built alongside the Barracuda at the Hurst Performance facility, the Dodge Dart was an even smaller, lighter A-body platform. Dropping the 426 cubic inch race HEMI V8 into the Dart was essentially an act of mechanical violence. The engine was so massive that workers literally had to use sledgehammers to bash in the shock towers just to allow the valve covers to clear. It received the same aggressive treatment as the Barracuda: fiberglass front fenders, a lift-off fiberglass hood, and lightweight Corning glass. It lacked a warranty, and Dodge went so far as to affix a sticker on the interior, expressly warning buyers that the vehicle was not suitable for use on public highways. The Dodge Dart HEMI ran a devastating 10.3-second quarter-mile right out of the box. With minor suspension tuning and racing slicks, professional drivers pushed these factory-delivered vehicles into the high 9-second range. It was completely unhinged, undeniably dangerous, and undeniably the fastest. The LO29 Dodge Dart HEMI dominated because it represented the absolute extreme of the factory horsepower wars. While the ZL1 Camaros and Boss Mustangs were attempting to balance street drivability with high performance, the Hemi Dart abandoned all compromises. It was a purpose-built weapon that made no apologies for what it was. The 1960s will forever be remembered as the pinnacle of American automotive performance, a time when the factory threw out the rulebook and let engineers dictate the limits of speed. The machines created during this era remain legendary, unmatched in their raw mechanical purity. Which one would you take down the quarter mile? Let me know in the comments.